Chapter 61. The summer sun shone brightly over Sylvania on the morning of June 15, 1883, as a crowd gathered outside the new flagship store of Hesh Motors. The building, constructed with a modern yet functional design, stood proudly at the heart of the city. Above the entrance, a large sign read, Hesh Motors, driving the future. Inside the showroom, Matthew Hesh stood near the front desk, ensuring every detail was perfect. Beside him were Amber and the team of Hesh Motors staff, all dressed in sharp uniforms with the company logo stitched onto the chest. On the showroom floor, three gleaming automobiles took center stage: a sedan, a pickup truck, and an SUV. Each model was meticulously polished, reflecting the sunlight streaming through the large windows. "Everything looks ready," Amber said, glancing at the polished automobiles. "Let's hope the turnout matches the anticipation." Matthew nodded, adjusting his tie. "It will. The advertisements, the driving schools, the demonstrations, it's all led to this moment." Outside, the line of people waiting to enter stretched down the block. Most were members of the upper class, dressed in their finest attire. Some held newspapers with headlines praising the innovative automobiles of Hesh Motors, while others discussed the features they had read about or seen during public demonstrations. At precisely 9 a.m., the doors were opened. Matthew and Amber stood at the entrance, welcoming the first visitors with warm smiles. The crowd flowed in steadily, their eyes immediately drawn to the automobiles on display. "Your next chapter is on Novelbin." The sedan, with its sleek design and focus on comfort, attracted professionals and families looking for a reliable means of transportation. The pickup truck, built for durability and utility, appealed to business owners and farmers. The SUV, larger and more versatile, caught the attention of those seeking both style and practicality. "Okay, let's greet our customer," Matthew said, inviting Amber. Matthew approached a well-dressed man who was inspecting the Hesh S16, a stunning automobile that stood out with its long, elegant frame and powerful presence. The man, likely in his mid-40s, carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to wealth. His tailored suit and gold pocket watch hinted at his social status. He ran his hand thoughtfully along the polished hood, studying the vehicle's design. "Good morning," Matthew greeted warmly, extending his hand. "I'm Matthew Hesh, the founder of Hesh Motors. I see you've taken an interest in one of our flagship models." The man turned, a friendly smile on his face as he shook Matthew's hand. "Good morning, Mr. Hesh. I'm Edmund Carter. This model is quite impressive." Amber stepped forward, her demeanor professional yet approachable. "It's one of our finest vehicles, Mr. Carter." The Hesh S16 was designed with both performance and luxury in mind. Edmund nodded, his eyes shifting back to the automobile. "Luxury and performance, you say? Tell me more about its capabilities." Matthew motioned for a nearby staff member to step in and open the vehicle's door. "Please, take a look inside," he said. "This model features an innovative engine design, providing exceptional power while maintaining a smooth, quiet ride. It's built for those who value both sophistication and reliability." Edmund leaned in, inspecting the plush leather interior and the carefully crafted dashboard. "It's certainly a step above anything else I've seen. What's the top speed?" Matthew smiled. "This model can reach speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest vehicles on the market. It's also equipped with reinforced suspension, ensuring comfort even on rougher roads." Edmund straightened, clearly impressed. "That's remarkable, and the craftsmanship, every detail feels deliberate." Amber chimed in. "That's exactly what we aim for, Mr. Carter. At Hesh Motors, we believe every vehicle should be more than just a machine, it should be an experience." Edmund took a step back, crossing his arms as he continued to study the automobile. "I have a summer estate a few miles outside the city. The roads leading to it are less than ideal. Would this handle them?" Matthew nodded confidently. "Absolutely. The Hesh S16 was designed to perform under various conditions. We've tested it extensively to ensure it can handle uneven terrain without compromising the ride quality." "That's good to know," Edmund said thoughtfully. "Now, what about maintenance? A machine this advanced must require special care." "Our driving school also includes a basic maintenance course," Matthew explained. "Every owner learns how to keep their vehicle in excellent condition, and if professional servicing is ever needed, Hesh Motors provides that as well." Edmund smiled again, his interest clearly piqued. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I already finished the course in one of your driving schools. I am interested in buying this car, but if I bought it, there wouldn't be any for everyone else." Matthew simply smiled. "You are wrong, Mr. Carter, because the vehicles you are seeing in the showroom are only for display. The automobiles that you will take home along with you are in our garage, which is just adjacent to this building." "Oh really? I thought you only sell 3 of them." Edmund chuckled. "Okay, how much is this?" About 400 florins. You can either pay with cash or through in-house financing, Matthew answered. In-house financing? Edmund repeated. In-house financing is simply a payment plan we offer. Instead of paying the full amount up front, you can make smaller payments over time. This option is available for customers who prefer to manage their cash flow while still enjoying the benefits of owning a Hesh Motors automobile. Edmund nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. And what are the terms? Our standard plan requires a down payment of 100 florins, Matthew explained, followed by monthly installments spread over 5 years. There's a small interest rate, but we ensure it's competitive. Edmund rubbed his chin, considering the offer. That's a generous option. However, I'll pay in cash. I prefer to settle things up front. Amber smiled, stepping in smoothly. That's an excellent choice, Mr. Carter. Robert, she called to one of the staff members. Could you assist Mr. Carter in finalizing his purchase? Robert approached promptly, clipboard in hand. Of course, Mr. Carter, please follow me to our sales desk and we'll get everything taken care of. As Edmund walked toward the sales desk with Robert, Amber turned to Matthew. That went well. He's clearly impressed. That's our goal, to impress them, Matthew said. Now, we have about 1,000 units that we have to sell. Let's empty our garage. Chapter 62. The first day of sales at Hesh Motors' flagship store had gone better than anyone expected. Customers flooded the showroom from the moment the doors opened, with most purchases being paid in cash. The wealthy upper-class clientele showed little hesitation in acquiring the luxurious Hesh S16, while the middle class gravitated toward the more affordable sedan and pickup models. By the end of the day, the sales desk was stacked with contracts, and the garage adjacent to the showroom was steadily emptying as buyers drove away in their new automobiles. Matthew stood near the sales desk, watching as the last few customers finalized their purchases. He turned to Amber, who was helping a family choose between the sedan and the SUV. She caught his eye and smiled. This has been a great start, Amber said as she joined him. I wasn't expecting so many cash buyers. Matthew nodded. Neither was I. It seems the upper class was more than ready to embrace the automobile. That's a good sign for you. It means we've positioned the brand well. Amber glanced around the showroom, now quieter as the day came to a close. Still, I think there's room to grow. We've got a good start with sales and the driving schools, but what's next? Matthew thought for a moment, then spoke. I have an idea. Let's close up here and I'll discuss it with Mr. Fitzwilliam tonight. Later that evening, Matthew and Charles Fitzwilliam met in the office above the flagship store. Charles, as usual, had a glass of brandy in hand and a satisfied smile on his face. Well, Matthew, Charles began, today has been a resounding success. You've proven that the automobile isn't just a novelty, it's the future. And it's clear that Hesh Motors is leading the way. Thank you, Mr. Fitzwilliam, Matthew replied, taking a seat across from him. But I believe there's more we can do to ensure our long-term success. I'd like to propose starting a new business and insurance company for automobiles. Charles raised an eyebrow. Insurance? For the cars? Yes, Matthew said, leaning forward. Think about it. Automobiles are a major investment, even for the wealthy. While our vehicles are built to last, accidents and mechanical issues are bound to happen. Customers would feel more confident buying a car if they knew their investment was protected. Charles nodded slowly. Go on. Matthew continued, keeping his explanation straightforward. Hey Race, how it would work. We'd create a separate company, let's call it Hesh Assurance. This company would offer insurance policies exclusively for Hesh Motors automobiles. Customers could choose from different levels of coverage, depending on their needs. The policies would cover things like repairs, damage from accidents, and even theft. And how would this benefit us financially? Charles asked. Continue your adventure at Novelbin. Calm. There are several ways. Matthew replied. First, the insurance premiums would generate a steady stream of income, even after the initial sale of the vehicle. Second, we'd keep most of the claims in-house by partnering with our own repair shops. That means we control costs while providing quality service. Third, offering insurance builds customer loyalty. People who feel secure are more likely to buy from us again. Charles sipped his brandy, considering the idea. And the risks? Insurance is a business with its own set of challenges. That's true, Matthew admitted. But we can manage those risks. Our driving schools significantly reduce the chances of accidents, and our vehicles are built to be durable. Plus, we'll start with conservative coverage limits and adjust as we learn more about customer needs and claim patterns. Charles leaned back in his chair, a small smile forming. It's a smart idea, Matthew. I like the sound of it. What's your plan to get this off the ground? Matthew outlined his approach. First, we'll hire experts in insurance actuaries, underwriters, and claims adjusters. They'll help us design the policies and calculate the premiums. Next, we'll integrate the insurance offering into the sales process. When a customer buys a car, they'll have the option to purchase a policy on the spot. It'll be seamless. Charles nodded. That makes sense. How do we get customers interested? Simple, Matthew said. We market it as peace of mind. We'll emphasize that their investment is protected and that any issues will be handled by professionals who know their car inside and out. And the name? Charles asked. You mentioned Hesh Assurance. I like it. Thank you, Matthew said with a smile. It ties in with the Hesh Motors brand and reinforces our commitment to supporting our customers. Charles raised his glass. To Hesh Assurance. Let's make it happen. The next morning, Matthew gathered his leadership team to share the new idea. He explained the concept and the potential benefits, breaking it down into simple terms so everyone could follow. Our customers are making a big investment when they buy one of our automobiles, he said. By offering insurance, we're giving them peace of mind, and for us, it's a way to generate ongoing income and strengthen our relationship with them. The team responded positively, offering suggestions for how to implement the idea. They discussed hiring insurance professionals, partnering with repair shops, and creating marketing materials to promote the new service. Within weeks, Hesh Motors began laying the groundwork for Hesh Assurance. Matthew and Charles worked together to recruit experts and set up the necessary infrastructure. Lawyers drafted contracts, actuaries calculated premiums, and the marketing team developed slogans like, "Drive with confidence, drive with Hesh Assurance." By the end of the summer, the first Hesh Assurance policies were available to customers. When buyers visited the showroom, they were presented with the option to purchase insurance alongside their automobile. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many customers choosing to add a policy for the added security it provided. Matthew stood in the showroom one afternoon, watching as a customer signed up for both a car and an insurance policy. Amber approached him, a hint of curiosity in her expression. You never stop, do you? She asked with a smile. Matthew chuckled. Not when there's more we can do. This insurance business is just another way to show our customers that we're looking out for them. Amber nodded. And it's a smart way to boost profits, too. Exactly, Matthew said. Everyone wins, customers get peace of mind, and we create a steady stream of revenue. It's the perfect complement to what we're already doing, and there is another idea which could add another stream of revenue. Chapter 63. The showroom at Hesh Motors continued to thrive. After the overwhelming success of the first sales day, Matthew noticed a trend that he couldn't ignore. While the wealthy clientele had no trouble paying for automobiles in cash, many middle-class buyers were relying on the company's in-house financing program. While this system worked, Matthew realized it had limitations. To truly capture the growing middle-class market and streamline the financing process, a more sophisticated solution was needed. That evening, Matthew sat in his office, scribbling notes in a notebook. Amber entered with 2 cups of coffee, setting one down on his desk. You look deep in thought, she said, taking a seat across from him. I am, Matthew admitted, setting his pen down. The in-house financing we offer is good, but it's not scalable. If we want to reach more of the middle class, we'll need something better. I've been thinking about starting a bank. Find your adventure at Novelbin. Amber raised an eyebrow. A bank? That's a big leap, even for you. Matthew nodded. It is, but it makes sense. With a bank, we could provide loans specifically tailored for automobile purchases. We'd also have more flexibility in setting terms and interest rates, and if we do this right, it could become a major source of revenue. Amber sipped her coffee. You'll need help with this. A bank isn't something you can start on your own. I know, Matthew said. That's why I'm going to propose a partnership with Fitzwilliam Bank. Amber's eyes widened. My father's bank? He'll want to hear a detailed plan. And I've been working on one, Matthew replied with a small smile. I think it's time to set up a meeting. The next morning, Matthew arranged a meeting with Charles at the Fitzwilliam Bank headquarters. The building, an imposing structure in the heart of Amsterdam, reflected the bank's long-standing reputation as one of the most trusted financial institutions in the region. Charles greeted Matthew warmly, motioning for him to sit. Matthew, It's always a pleasure. What brings you here today? Matthew leaned forward, his tone serious but enthusiastic. Mr. Fitzwilliam, I've been analyzing the data from our sales, and while our current financing program is effective, it has limitations as our customer base grows, especially among the middle class. We'll need a more robust system. That's why I'm proposing we start a new bank, one that specializes in loans for automobile purchases. Charles raised an eyebrow. A bank specifically for automobiles? That's an intriguing idea. Tell me more. Matthew began explaining. Currently, our in-house financing program is funded directly by Hesh Motors. While it works for now, it ties up a significant amount of capital that could be used for other operations, like expanding production or opening new showrooms. Charles nodded, following closely. With a dedicated bank, Matthew continued, we could create a separate entity to handle the financing. Customers would apply for loans through the bank, freeing up Hesh Motors to focus on manufacturing and sales. The bank could offer competitive interest rates and flexible payment terms, making it easier for middle-class buyers to afford our automobiles. And how do you propose we structure this bank? Charles asked, his interest piqued. I envision it as a joint venture. Matthew said, Hesh Motors would bring the customer base and the industry-specific knowledge, while Fitzwilliam Bank would provide the financial expertise and infrastructure to get it off the ground. Together, we could establish something truly unique. Charles leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. What about the risks? Lending money always comes with the potential for defaults. Matthew nodded. That's true, and we'll need to be cautious, but there are ways to mitigate the risks. First, we'll require a reasonable down payment on every loan to ensure customers have a stake in the purchase. Second, the driving schools we've established mean that buyers are trained and responsible, reducing the likelihood of accidents that might make them unable to repay. Finally, we'll work closely with Fitzwilliam Bank to create strong underwriting standards. Charles appeared satisfied with the explanation. And what's the benefit to Fitzwilliam Bank? Expansion, Matthew said simply. This partnership would allow Fitzwilliam Bank to enter a new and rapidly growing market, automobile financing. As demand for cars increases, so will the demand for loans. It's a win-win situation. Charles smiled. You've thought this through, Matthew. I must say I'm impressed. After a lengthy discussion, Charles agreed to move forward with the idea, provided Matthew could present a detailed implementation plan. Over the next few weeks, Matthew and the leadership teams from both Hesh Motors and Fitzwilliam Bank worked together to lay the groundwork for the new venture. The first step was choosing a name. After much deliberation, they settled on Hesh Financial Services, a name that tied the new entity to Hesh Motors while signaling its specialized purpose. Next, the team developed the loan structure. They decided on 3 tiers of loans to cater to different customer needs. Standard loans for middle-class buyers, offering reasonable interest rates and flexible terms. Premium loans for upper-class buyers, with lower interest rates and added perks like expedited approvals. Starter loans for younger buyers or those with limited credit history, requiring a larger down payment but offering a pathway to ownership. Marketing materials were created to explain the benefits of Hesh Financial Services. Slogans like, Own your dream car with Hesh Financial Services, were tested and approved. By the end of the year, Hesh Financial Services was ready to launch. The service was integrated into the car buying process at Hesh Motors showrooms. When customers expressed interest in financing, they were directed to a dedicated desk where loan officers from Hesh Financial Services walked them through the process. The response was immediate and positive. Middle-class buyers appreciated the flexibility and clarity of the loan terms, while upper-class buyers saw the premium loans as a convenient option. The streamlined process made purchasing a car more accessible, further boosting Hesh Motors sales. One afternoon, Matthew stood in the showroom, observing as a young couple signed the paperwork for a sedan through Hesh Financial Services. Amber joined him, her expression curious. So, the insurance? The financing, what's next? She asked with a smile. Matthew chuckled. Now, we let things be first and see the money comes in. Chapter 64. By August of 1883, the success of Hesh Motors was undeniable, with over 50,000 vehicles sold. The automobile had become a symbol of progress and innovation across the great Republic of Amarathia, wealthy individuals eagerly replaced their horse-drawn carriages with sleek, efficient automobiles. Even the middle class, aided by Hesh Financial Services, was beginning to embrace the new mode of transportation, but not everyone welcomed this transformation. The booming automobile industry had unintended consequences, particularly for those whose livelihoods depended on horse-drawn carriages. Carriage drivers, stable owners, blacksmiths, and others in the horse-related trades were struggling to adapt to the rapid change. The demand for carriages had plummeted, leaving many workers without income. The frustration boiled over into organized protests. Groups of carriage workers took to the streets, carrying signs and shouting slogans denouncing the rise of automobiles. While some protests were peaceful, others turned hostile. Reports of vandalism began to emerge. Parked automobiles were scratched or defaced, and gas stations had their windows broken during the night. These actions, while isolated at first, began to affect Hesh Motors' business. Matthew sat in his office, reviewing the latest sales reports. Despite the strong numbers, the protests and vandalism were a growing concern. Amber entered, holding a stack of newspapers. She placed them on his desk, her expression serious. "Have you seen these?" she asked. Matthew picked up one of the papers. The headline read, "Carriage workers protest automobile boom, tensions rise in across the nation. Continue your adventure at Novelbin." Calm, he sighed, scanning the article. It was only a matter of time. The automobile has disrupted their entire industry. Amber nodded. And it's not just the protests. We've had reports of vandalism at our gas stations and showrooms. It's starting to impact sales. Matthew set the paper down, leaning back in his chair. We can't ignore this. If we don't address their concerns, the backlash will only grow. What do you suggest? Amber asked. This isn't something we can solve with a new product or marketing campaign. Matthew thought for a moment before replying. We need to engage with them directly, listen to their grievances, and see if there's a way to help them transition. That's the only way. After days of gathering information, Matthew identified the leader of the protests as Harold Pritchard, a prominent horse-drawn carriage company owner. Harold's speeches against automobiles had stirred the unrest among carriage workers, fueling their resentment. While he denied direct involvement in the vandalism, his rhetoric was undoubtedly a driving force. Matthew arranged a meeting with Harold at a neutral location, a quiet office space in downtown Sylvania. The tension in the room was palpable as the two men faced each other across a polished wooden table. Mr. Pritchard, Matthew began, his tone calm but firm. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Harold, a stout man with graying hair, crossed his arms. I didn't have much of a choice, did I? Your people made it clear you wanted a word. Matthew nodded, leaning forward slightly. I'll get straight to the point. The protests and vandalism targeting my business have gone too far. Damages to our gas stations and vehicles are mounting. And it's clear that your speeches have been a significant factor in inciting this behavior. Harold scoffed. My speeches? I've only spoken the truth. Your automobiles are destroying the livelihoods of honest workers. I never told anyone to damage your property. Matthew's eyes narrowed. You may not have given direct orders, but your words have consequences. When you stand in front of an angry crowd and denounce my company, calling us the enemy, what do you think happens next? You've created a mob mentality, and now you're trying to wash your hands of it. Harold's posture stiffened. I'm not responsible for what others choose to do. I have no control over them. Matthew leaned back, his expression sharp. You're wrong. You have more control than you're willing to admit. And whether or not you intended for this to happen, you've set these events in motion. That makes you accountable. Harold's jaw tightened. You can't prove him behind the vandalism. Matthew's voice grew colder. I don't need to prove it in the way you think. Your speeches and public appearances are well documented. They show a clear pattern of incitement, and I have enough evidence to bring a case against you. Harold raised an eyebrow. A case? On what grounds? Matthew didn't flinch. Incitement of property damage, disruption of commerce, and endangering public safety. I've consulted with some of the best lawyers in the country. If I decide to move forward, you'll be facing a mountain of legal trouble. Harold laughed bitterly. Do you think the courts will side with you? I represent the working man, the people who've been thrown aside by your so-called progress. Matthew's tone turned steely. I represent progress itself, Mr. Pritchard, and if you think I'm alone in this, you're mistaken. I have the backing of some of the most influential businessmen and politicians in Amarathia. If I wanted, I could have all the charges laid squarely at your feet. Your connections won't protect you from what I can bring down. Harold hesitated, clearly unnerved by Matthew's confidence. You're bluffing. Matthew's gaze was unwavering. Try me, I've already spoken with the mayor, and I have the support of key members of Congress. They see the vandalism and protests as a threat to the nation's progress. This isn't just about Hesh Motors, it's about the future of transportation and industry. You've picked a fight with forces much larger than yourself. Harold shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado faltering. What do you want, then? If you're so powerful, why bother meeting with me? Because I believe in solutions, Matthew said, his tone softening slightly. I don't want to destroy you, Mr. Pritchard. I want to resolve this in a way that benefits everyone, but if you force my hand, I won't hesitate to protect what I've built. Harold stared at him, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. What kind of solution are you proposing? How about transitioning your company into an automobile taxi service? The demand for public transportation will only grow as cities expand, and automobiles can meet that demand more efficiently than horse-drawn carriages ever could. Chapter 65. Harold frowned, his skepticism evident. And what makes you think I can just switch like that? My entire business is built on horses and carriages. Switching to automobiles isn't as simple as you make it sound. Find exclusive stories on NovelBin.com. Matthew gestured toward Harold with an open palm. I understand your hesitation. Change is never easy, but you're already losing ground. Horse-drawn transportation is becoming obsolete, and the longer you resist, the harder it will be to recover. I'm not offering you a handout, I'm offering you a path forward. Harold crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. And how exactly do you propose I do that? Automobiles are expensive. Even if I wanted to make the switch, where would the money come from? Matthew smiled faintly. That's where I come in. Hesh Financial Services can provide you with the capital to purchase a fleet of automobiles. You'll get preferential loan terms because we'll be working together to grow the automobile industry. We'll also provide training for your drivers to ensure they're ready to operate the vehicles safely and efficiently. Harold shook his head, his doubt evident. And what happens if this fails? If I sink everything into this and it doesn't work, I'll lose everything. Matthew's expression turned serious. If you don't make a change, you're already on the path to losing everything. The market is shifting whether you like it or not, and giving you a chance to adapt to not just survive but thrive. The alternative is continuing to fight a losing battle. Harold leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the table. You make it sound so easy, but it's not just about me. My workers, they're loyal to the old ways. How do I convince them to make this leap? Matthew softened his tone. You lead by example. Show them that the future isn't something to fear but an opportunity to grow. It'll even help with the transition. Well, provide job guarantees for your workers who are willing to train for new roles in the automobile industry. No one has to be left behind. Harold looked up, his expression conflicted. You've clearly thought this through, but what if I say no? What if I stick to my business and keep fighting? Matthew's smile faded, and his tone turned icy. If you say no, then the consequences are on you. The damages caused by the protests and vandalism linked to your name are significant, and I won't hesitate to pursue legal action. I've been patient. But that patience has limits. Harold stiffened. You're really willing to go that far? Matthew nodded. Absolutely. I have the backing of powerful allies in business and government. If you want to escalate this, you'll lose. Plain and simple, but I don't want it to come to that, Mr. Pritchard. I'd much rather see you and your workers find success in the new era we're building. The room was silent for a moment as Harold considered his options. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh. You're giving me a lot to think about. This isn't an easy decision. Matthew nodded, his tone steady. I don't expect you to decide right this second, but understand this. The future is already here, and it's moving fast. You can either be part of it or be left behind. Harold stood, his expression still uncertain. I'll consider your offer, but don't expect me to agree without a fight. Matthew stood as well, extending his hand. I wouldn't expect anything less. Take your time, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. Harold hesitated before shaking Matthew's hand. We'll see where this goes. As Harold left the meeting, Amber entered the room, having waited outside. How did it go? She asked, her curiosity evident. Matthew exhaled, his expression thoughtful. He's hesitant, but I think he'll come around. He doesn't have many options left. Amber crossed her arms, a small smile tugging at her lips. You have a way of getting people to see things your way. Matthew shrugged. It's not about my way, it's about the way forward. Harold has the chance to adapt and lead his people into the future. If he's smart, he'll take it. Amber nodded. And if he doesn't? Matthew's tone turned firm. Then we protect what we've built. Progress can't be stopped, Amber. Not by protests, not by fear, and not by nostalgia for a past that's fading away. The following morning, Harold called Matthew, requesting another meeting. There was a hint of resignation in Harold's voice, though he maintained his characteristic gruffness. They agreed to meet later that afternoon at the same neutral office space. When Harold arrived, his demeanor was more subdued than the day before. He walked in without much ceremony. His shoulders slightly hunched. Matthew stood to greet him, his expression neutral but attentive. "Mr. Hesh," Harold began, settling into the chair across from Matthew. "I've thought about your offer." Matthew nodded. "And," Harold sighed, running a hand over his face, "you're right. Fighting this change is a losing battle. I've built my business from the ground up, but the world is moving faster than I can keep up. If I don't adapt, it'll lose everything. My workers, they'll lose everything." Matthew leaned forward slightly, his tone firm but encouraging. "It's not an easy decision, Mr. Pritchard, but it's the right one. By transitioning your company to automobiles, you're not just saving your business, you're giving your workers a future." Harold nodded reluctantly. "I'll accept your offer, on the condition that my workers are taken care of during this transition. Many of them have families, and I won't leave them out in the cold." Matthew's expression softened. "That was always part of the plan. We'll guarantee jobs for any of your workers willing to train for roles in the automobile industry. Those who wish to stay on as drivers or start new ventures, like taxis, will receive our full support. This is about creating opportunities, not taking them away." Harold looked down at his hands, nodding slowly. "Then I'll transition my company to automobiles, but I'll need your help convincing my workers. They trust me, but they'll need more than my word to believe this will work." Matthew offered a reassuring smile. "You're not alone in this. I'll personally attend a meeting with your workers to explain the plan and answer their questions. Together, we'll show them that this is the best path forward." Chapter 66. The following week, Matthew and Harold stood before a gathering of Harold's workers at the company's main stables. The air was thick with uncertainty as the workers, clad in the worn uniforms of their trade, sat on benches and crates, murmuring among themselves. Most of them looked skeptical, a few openly hostile, but all were curious to hear what their employer and this new automobile magnate had to say. Harold stepped forward, clearing his throat. He looked out at his workers, men and women he had known for years, and took a deep breath. "Listen up, everyone," Harold began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "You all know me. I've been running this business for decades, and I've always tried to do right by you. But times are changing faster than any of us expected. The truth is, the world doesn't need as many horses and carriages anymore. The automobile is here, and it's changing everything." A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd, some nodding in understanding while others muttered under their breath. One worker, a wiry man with a thick mustache, stood up. "So what are you saying, boss? That we're out of a job?" Harold held up his hand, silencing the murmurs. "No, I'm not saying that. I've made an agreement with Mr. Hesh here, and I believe it's the best path forward for all of us. Instead of fighting this change, we're going to adapt. We're transitioning from carriages to automobiles." The crowd erupted in a mixture of disbelief and protest. Voices overlapped, some calling Harold a sellout, others questioning the feasibility of such a shift. Harold raised his voice over the din. "Quiet. Let him speak." Matthew stepped forward, his calm demeanor commanding attention. "I understand your concerns," he said, addressing the crowd directly. "Change is never easy, and it's natural to feel uncertain about what lies ahead, but let me assure you, this isn't the end of your work, it's a new beginning." The murmurs quieted, though skepticism lingered in the air. Matthew continued, his tone steady and confident. "Here's what we're offering: guaranteed jobs for anyone willing to train for roles in the automobile industry. You'll have the opportunity to learn new skills, whether it's driving, repairing, or even managing a fleet of vehicles. Those of you who wish to stay on as drivers will be part of a new taxi service that Harold's company will operate using automobiles." A burly worker with grease-stained hands raised his voice. "And what about the rest of us? Not everyone here can drive or fix machines. Matthew nodded. For those of you who aren't interested in those roles, we're offering support to help you transition into other opportunities within the industry. We're expanding rapidly, and there's room for everyone willing to grow with us. Another voice piped up, a middle-aged woman near the back. And what if we fail? What if this whole thing doesn't work out? Matthew's gaze swept over the crowd. Failure is always a possibility in life, but doing nothing is a guarantee of failure. This isn't a gamble, it's a calculated step forward. Automobiles are the future, and we're giving you the chance to be part of it from the ground up. Harold has agreed to ensure that no one is left behind, and Hesh Motors will provide the training and support you need to succeed. The tension in the room began to shift as the workers processed Matthew's words. Harold stepped forward again, his tone more commanding. You've trusted me all these years, and I've never let you down. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe it was the best thing for all of us. I know it's a lot to take in, but if we stick together, we can make this work. A younger worker, barely out of his teens, raised his hand. How long will the training take? Matthew smiled. Most training programs will take a few weeks, depending on the role. For those learning to drive, you'll complete a course at one of our driving schools. Mechanics will undergo hands-on training at our repair facilities. Well, make sure you're prepared before the transition is complete. The younger man nodded, encouraged by the clarity of the plan. Others in the crowd began murmuring their tentative agreement. After the meeting, Matthew and Harold stayed behind to speak with smaller groups of workers who had specific questions. By the end of the day, a majority of the workers had signed up for the training programs. Those who remained unsure were given time to consider their options, with Harold promising to support them regardless of their decision. As the sun set, Harold and Matthew stood outside the stables, watching as the workers dispersed. That went better than I expected, Harold admitted. I thought more of them would refuse outright. Matthew smiled faintly. People fear change, but when they see a clear path forward, they're more likely to take it. You did well, Harold. Your workers trust you. That's your greatest asset. Harold chuckled dryly. Let's hope I don't let them down. You want, Matthew said confidently. Well, make sure of it. Over the next few weeks, the transition began in earnest. Workers attended training programs, learning to operate and maintain automobiles. Harold's first fleet of vehicles, purchased through Hesh Financial Services, arrived at the stables. Now repurposed into a combination garage and training facility, the new taxi service, branded Pritchard Automobiles, launched with much fanfare. The first fleet of vehicles hit the streets, attracting attention and curiosity from passers-by. Within days, the service was receiving more requests than it could handle, prompting Harold to order an additional fleet. For Matthew, the success of the transition was another step forward in solidifying the automobile's place in society. He stood with Amber outside the newly rebranded garage one afternoon, watching as one of Harold's taxis pulled away with a passenger. This is what progress looks like, Matthew said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. Your journey continues on Novelbin. Calm. Amber nodded. And it's just the beginning. Chapter 67. The late summer sun cast a warm glow over Hudson as Matthew Hesh sat at his desk, reviewing the latest sales reports and operational updates for Hesh Motors. The success of the company's automobiles was undeniable, and the recent partnership with Harold Pritchard's taxi service had brought further validation to Matthew's vision for the future. His assistant, Robert, knocked on the door and entered, his expression serious. Mr. Hesh, there's a General Nathaniel Warner from the Army here to see you. He didn't make an appointment, but he says it's an urgent matter. Matthew raised an eyebrow, intrigued. A general? Did he say what this is about? No, sir, Robert replied, but he insisted it was important. Matthew straightened his tie and stood. Send him in. Moments later, General Nathaniel Warner entered the office, his uniform immaculate and his presence commanding. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with a square jaw and piercing blue eyes that seemed to assess everything in the room. Matthew stepped forward to greet him. General Warner, Matthew said, extending his hand, it's an honor to have you here. What can I do for you? The general shook his hand firmly. Mr. Hesh, thank you for seeing me on short notice. I've been following the success of your automobiles, and I believe they could serve a critical role in modernizing the Army's logistics. Matthew gestured to a chair. Please, have a seat. I'd like to hear more. General Warner sat, folding his hands on the desk. As you're aware, the Army currently relies heavily on horse-drawn wagons for transporting supplies, troops, and equipment. While dependable, they're slow, limited in capacity, and increasingly impractical in the face of modern military challenges. The rise of your automobiles presents an opportunity to revolutionize how we handle logistics. Matthew leaned forward, his interest piqued. You're suggesting the Army adopt automobiles for logistical purposes? Precisely, Warner replied, your pickup trucks and SUVs, in particular, could be adapted for military use. They offer greater speed, range, and capacity than wagons, and their potential for versatility is immense with proper modifications. They could serve as troop carriers, supply vehicles, and even mobile command units. Matthew nodded thoughtfully. It's an intriguing idea. Have you considered the challenges? Military vehicles would need to handle rough terrain, heavy loads, and harsh conditions. They'd also require maintenance capabilities in remote locations. The general smiled faintly. We're aware of the challenges, Mr. Hesh, and that's why we're coming to you. Your company has demonstrated a commitment to innovation and quality. We believe Hesh Motors is capable of producing vehicles that meet our requirements. Matthew reached for a notepad and pen. Let's outline the specifics. What exactly would the Army need from these vehicles? General Warner leaned back slightly, considering his response. First and foremost, durability. Military vehicles must be rugged enough to handle rough terrain, including mud, sand, and rocky landscapes. Reinforced suspension systems and durable tires are a must. Matthew jotted down notes. Understood. What about load capacity? We'd need trucks capable of carrying up to 2,000 pounds of supplies or equipment, Warner said. For troop carriers, the vehicles should be able to transport at least 8 soldiers with their gear. Matthew nodded. What about range and fuel efficiency? The vehicles must have a range of at least 200 miles on a single tank of fuel, Warner replied. Fuel efficiency is important, but reliability in the field takes priority. And what about modifications? Matthew asked, would you require features like armor plating or specialized equipment mounts? For now, we're focused on utility, Warner said. Armor and weapon mounts could be considered for future iterations, but the immediate need is for logistics and transport. Matthew set down his pen and folded his hands on the desk. I appreciate your thoroughness, General. I believe Hesh Motors can meet these requirements. Now let's discuss logistics on our end. How many vehicles are you looking to procure, and what's your timeline? General Warner's expression turned serious. We'd start with an initial order of 500 vehicles to conduct field testing across various units. If the results are favorable, we'd look at a larger contract for several thousand vehicles. As for the timeline, we'd need the first batch within 6 months. Matthew leaned back, considering the scale of the request. That's an ambitious timeline, but it's feasible. We'd need to allocate a dedicated production line for military vehicles and hire additional workers. There would also be costs associated with modifying the vehicles to meet your specifications. We're prepared to invest in this partnership, Warner said. The Army has allocated funds for modernization and we're willing to pay a premium for quality and reliability. Matthew's mind raced with possibilities. This contract could open a new market for Hesh Motors, solidifying its reputation as a leader in innovation and expanding its influence beyond the civilian sector. There's one more thing to consider, Matthew said. Maintenance and training. Your soldiers would need to know how to operate and maintain these vehicles effectively. We've considered that, Warner replied. We'd propose a partnership with your driving schools to train our personnel. Additionally, we'd like to work with your engineers to develop a simplified maintenance guide and supply kits for field repairs. Matthew smiled. That's a smart approach. I'll have my team collaborate with yours to ensure the training programs and maintenance guides are tailored to your needs. The general extended his hand. So, do we have a deal? Matthew shook his hand firmly. We do. I'll begin assembling a team to handle this project immediately. I'll also arrange for a demonstration of our vehicles in the coming weeks, so your team can see what we're capable of. As General Warner left the office, Amber entered, a curious look on her face. A general? That's not something you see every day. What did he want? Enjoy new chapters from Novelbin. Matthew grinned. The Army wants to modernize its logistics with automobiles. They're placing an initial order for 500 vehicles and considering a larger contract if the tests go well. Amber's eyes widened. That's incredible. It could be a huge opportunity for Hesh Motors. It is, Matthew said, already reaching for his notebook, but it's also a challenge. We'll need to meet their specifications, deliver on time, and prove that our vehicles can handle military conditions. If we pull this off, it'll cement our place in history. Amber smiled. I have no doubt you'll make it happen. Matthew nodded, his expression determined. Failure isn't an option. Let's get to work. Chapter 68. The next morning, Matthew gathered his leadership team in the conference room of Hesh Motors' Hudson headquarters. The energy in the room was palpable, with every member of the team eager to hear about the Army's request. Matthew stood at the head of the table. A blueprint rolled up under his arm. Amber sat to his right, her notebook open, ready to take notes. Robert, the assistant, was stationed near the door, prepared to distribute documents. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew began. We've been presented with an incredible opportunity. The Army wants us to design and deliver 500 vehicles for logistical purposes with the potential for much larger orders if the field tests go well. A murmur of excitement swept through the room, but Matthew quickly raised his hand for quiet. This is unlike anything we've done before, he continued. The Army's requirements are demanding. These vehicles need to be durable, reliable, and versatile enough to handle rough terrain and heavy loads. They've also given us a tight timeline, 6 months to deliver the first batch. Amber interjected, her tone measured. 6 months is ambitious, but if we focus our efforts, it's achievable. Matthew nodded. Exactly, that's why I've called this meeting. We need to reallocate resources and establish a dedicated production line for this project. This means pausing some civilian production temporarily, but the potential rewards far outweigh the short-term adjustments. He unrolled the blueprint on the table, revealing a rough design of a military-grade pickup truck. The vehicle featured reinforced suspension, all-terrain tires, and a modular cargo bed that could be adapted for different uses. This is our starting point, Matthew said, pointing to the design. We'll call it the Hesh M1. It's based on our existing pickup truck model, but with significant upgrades to meet the Army's needs. Experience new tales on Novelbin. Matthew turned to the head of engineering, Lionel Harrington. Lionel, I want your team to focus on the technical upgrades, reinforced suspension, durable axles, and an engine that can handle extreme conditions. We'll need prototypes ready for testing within the next 6 weeks. Lionel nodded, already jotting down notes. We'll need to source new materials for the suspension and tires. I'll contact our suppliers today. Matthew then addressed the head of production, Andrew Nils. Andrew, you'll oversee the establishment of the new production line, coordinate with Lionel to ensure the assembly process accommodates the upgraded components. I'll authorize additional hires if needed. Andrew gave a firm nod. Understood. I'll start planning shifts and reassigning workers from our civilian lines. Turning to Amber, Matthew continued, Amber, you'll handle communication with the Army, keep them updated on our progress and arrange for their engineers to visit the factory. Their input will be crucial during the prototyping phase. Amber smiled, I'll make sure they're involved at every step. Thank you for doing this, voluntarily, Matthew said. Well, it's boring to stay at the mansion and do nothing but paint all day, Amber chuckled, at least here, it's more fulfilling. Finally, Matthew addressed Robert. Robert, I'll need you to coordinate with our driving schools to create a specialized training program for Army personnel, work with the instructors to tailor the curriculum to military needs. Robert stood straighter, his expression determined. I'll get started immediately. Over the next several weeks, the team worked tirelessly to bring the project to life. Lionel's engineering team encountered their first major challenge when the reinforced suspension system proved too rigid, causing the prototype to lose stability on uneven terrain. We need to find a balance between durability and flexibility, Lionel explained during a progress meeting. Otherwise, the vehicle will be too rough for extended use. Matthew leaned over the blueprint, studying the suspension design. What about a dual-shock system? It could absorb more impact without compromising durability. Lionel's eyes lit up. That could work. I'll have the team prototype it immediately. Meanwhile, Andrew faced his own hurdles in the production line. The heavier components required adjustments to the assembly process, and the workers needed additional training to handle the new parts. Efficiency is dropping, Andrew reported. But it's to be expected with such a steep learning curve. Keep it at, Matthew encouraged. Once the workers are familiar with the process, production will speed up. Amber, on her end, coordinated with the Army's engineers who visited the factory to review the prototypes. They suggested adding a removable canopy for the cargo bed to protect supplies from the elements. That's a great idea, Matthew said, sketching the modification on the blueprint. Well, integrate it into the final design. 6 weeks into the project, the first Hesh M1 prototype rolled off the production line. The team gathered in the factory's testing yard, where the vehicle would undergo its initial trials, painted in matte olive green. The truck looked every bit the part of a military workhorse. Lionel climbed into the driver's seat, with Matthew and one of the Army engineers riding as passengers. The truck roared to life, its powerful engine purring steadily. They drove the Hesh M1 through a series of tests, including steep inclines, muddy tracks, and rough gravel roads. The dual-shock suspension system performed flawlessly, absorbing impacts and keeping the ride stable. This is impressive, the Army engineer said as they returned to the yard. It's exactly what we need. Matthew smiled, relief washing over him. It's a good start, but we're not done yet. The next step is mass production. With the prototype approved, Andrew ramped up production. Workers operated in shifts around the clock, assembling vehicles at a steady pace. The factory hummed with activity. The sound of machinery and the chatter of workers creating a symphony of progress, Amber reported regular updates to General Warner, who expressed satisfaction with the project's pace. If the rest of the vehicles are as good as the prototype, this will be a game-changer for the Army, Warner said during a phone call. By the end of the fourth month, the first 100 M1 trucks were delivered to the Army for field testing. Soldiers at a nearby base were trained by Motors instructors who guided them through operating and maintaining the vehicles. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Soldiers praised the truck's durability, ease of use, and adaptability to different tasks. General Warner sent a letter of commendation to Matthew, expressing his gratitude for Motors' dedication to the project. In his office, Matthew read the letter aloud to Amber and Lionel. "This is just the beginning," he said, setting the letter down. "If the field tests go well, we'll be looking at a contract for thousands of vehicles. Motors is entering a new era." Amber smiled. "You've built something incredible, Matthew." Matthew nodded, a sense of pride and determination filling him. "And we're just getting started." Chapter 69. Matthew stood near the factory gates of Motors in Hudson, watching as the last of the 100 M1 trucks were lined up in perfect formation. The vehicles, freshly painted in matte olive green, gleamed under the morning sun. Workers bustled around, performing final inspections and ensuring everything was in order for the Army's arrival. Amber approached, holding a clipboard. "Everything's ready. The trucks have been checked twice, and all the paperwork is in order." Matthew nodded, his expression calm but focused. "Good, the general will be here any moment, and this delivery has to go flawlessly. This is our first major step into a new market, and it needs to make an impression." Not long after, a convoy of Army carriages pulled into the factory yard. General Nathaniel Warner stepped out of the lead carriage, his uniform impeccable as always. He was accompanied by a small entourage of officers and aides. Matthew stepped forward to greet him, extending his hand. "General Warner, welcome back to Motors," Matthew said warmly. The general shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Hesh, it's good to see you again. I trust everything is ready?" Matthew gestured toward the row of trucks. "As promised, 100 units of the M1, built to your exact specifications. You're welcome to inspect them yourself." Warner nodded, his piercing gaze scanning the lineup. "That's exactly what I intend to do." The general and his team began a thorough inspection of the vehicles. Matthew and Amber followed closely, answering questions and providing details about the truck's features. Warner climbed into the driver's seat of one truck and started the engine. The deep, steady hum of the motor filled the air. "Smooth start," Warner remarked, turning to one of his aides. "Make a note of that. Discover hidden stories at Novelbin." Calm, he tested the steering, brakes, and gear shifts, nodding in approval. "Responsive controls, that's critical for field conditions." Matthew gestured toward the cargo bed. The modular cargo bed can be adapted for various purposes: supply transport, troop seating, or even medical equipment. The removable canopy provides protection from the elements. Warner examined the cargo bed, running his hand over the reinforced panels. "Good build quality, durable but not overly heavy." One of the Army engineers joined the conversation. "General, we also tested the dual-shock suspension system during field trials. It performed exceptionally well on uneven terrain, minimizing vibrations." Warner stepped out of the truck and inspected the tires. "These all-terrain tires, how do they hold up in extreme conditions?" Matthew answered confidently. "They're reinforced with a steel belt for added durability and have deep treads for optimal traction in mud, sand, and gravel. We've tested them extensively under harsh conditions." Warner moved to the rear of another truck where an Army soldier demonstrated how quickly the cargo bed could be converted for different uses. The general watched closely, then turned to Matthew. "You've delivered on every promise, Mr. Hesh. These vehicles are exactly what we need." After completing the inspection, General Warner and his team gathered with Matthew and Amber in the factory's conference room. The atmosphere was formal but optimistic. On the table lay a detailed contract outlining the terms of the agreement. Warner took a seat at the head of the table, pulling out a fountain pen. "Mr. Hesh, I'm pleased with what I've seen. The Army will officially accept delivery of these 100 units today." Amber handed him a document to sign, formalizing the transaction. Warner signed it without hesitation, then reached for his checkbook. Writing with precision, he filled out a check for 100,000 florins, handing it to Matthew. "This is payment for the first batch," Warner said, "and as discussed, the Army is committing to an additional 900 units over the next year. That's another 900,000 florins. Matthew accepted the check, his expression calm but inwardly triumphant. "Thank you, General. It's an honor to work with the Army. I assure you, the next 900 units will meet the same high standards." Warner handed the second check to Amber, who placed it carefully into a folder well arranged for regular updates on your progress. Delivery schedules and any additional specifications will be communicated through our logistics department. Understood, Matthew replied. We'll keep you informed every step of the way. As the meeting concluded, Warner stood and shook Matthew's hand firmly. You've set a high bar, Mr. Hesh. These vehicles will make a significant difference in how the Army operates. Matthew smiled. I'm glad to hear that, General, and I look forward to building on this partnership. As Warner and his team left, Amber turned to Matthew, her expression a mix of excitement and pride. You just secured $1 million florin deal. That's monumental. Matthew nodded, his gaze steady. It's a step forward, Amber, but it's also a responsibility. The Army is counting on us, and we can't let them down. Amber placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You won't. Hesh Motors has proven it can meet any challenge. That's right. As the convoy of Army carriages left the factory, the hum of activity at Hesh Motors slowed. Workers, engineers, and administrative staff gathered in the factory yard, their faces alight with anticipation. Amber stood beside Matthew, who still held the signed contract and the check in his hands. Robert approached, a wide grin on his face. Mr. Hesh, the team is waiting for you to say a few words. Matthew nodded, stepping forward to address the crowd. He climbed onto a makeshift platform, his voice carrying over the factory yard. Today, we've accomplished something extraordinary together. We've proven that Hesh Motors is more than just a company, it's a force for progress. Delivering these vehicles to the Army is not just a milestone. It's the beginning of a new chapter in our history. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, their excitement contagious. Amber raised her voice to add, and let's not forget, this is a team effort. Every one of you contributed to making this possible. The cheers grew louder, and someone from the engineering team shouted, to Hesh Motors, prompting the crowd to chant the name in unison. A celebration was quickly arranged in the factory's dining hall. Tables were laden with food and drinks, and the atmosphere buzzed with camaraderie. Matthew mingled with the workers, shaking hands and expressing his gratitude. Chapter 70. By early 1884, the meteoric rise of Hesh Motors had captured global attention. Matthew Hesh knew that to sustain growth, it was time to expand beyond the borders of the Great Republic of Amarathia. The demand for automobiles was growing in Europe and Asia, and Matthew saw an opportunity to establish Hesh Motors as a global leader. With the success of the military contracts and the booming civilian market, the time was right to take the company to the next level. Matthew sat in his Hudson office with Amber, Robert, and several senior executives to discuss the next big step. A map of the world was spread across the conference table, marked with pins indicating potential locations for expansion. Europe and Asia, Matthew said. These are the two regions we need to target. Europe has strong industrial capabilities and a burgeoning middle class. Asia, particularly the Yamato Kingdom, is modernizing rapidly and offers untapped potential. Amber nodded, tracing her finger along the map. Where in Europe are you thinking? Matthew pointed to the pin placed on Britannia. Well, start in Britannia. It's an industrial powerhouse and has shown great interest in our vehicles. From there, we can branch out to neighboring countries like Francois and Prussia. And Asia? Robert asked. Yamato Kingdom, Matthew replied confidently. They're undergoing a period of rapid modernization, embracing Western technology. If we establish ourselves there early, we'll have a foothold in the entire region. The team nodded, recognizing the scale of the plan. Amber leaned forward. How do we approach this? Setting up international branches is no small feat. Matthew smiled faintly. We'll break it into phases. First, we'll establish regional headquarters in Britannia and Yamato Kingdom. These offices will oversee local production, sales, and logistics. Next, we'll set up factories to manufacture vehicles locally, reducing shipping costs and import tariffs. Finally, we'll launch aggressive marketing campaigns tailored to each region. Within months, Matthew and a select team arrived in Britannia, where they were greeted by industrial leaders and government officials eager to see what Hesh Motors could bring to their economy. The chosen site for the European headquarters was in Manchester, a bustling industrial city known for its skilled workforce and access to trade routes. The first step was securing land for the factory. Matthew met with Lord Richard Cavendish, a prominent landowner and businessman, to negotiate the purchase of a large industrial plot. This land is well situated, Lord Cavendish remarked as they walked the site, close to railways and ports. It'll serve your operations well. Matthew nodded. Exactly what we need. I envision a factory here capable of producing 5,000 vehicles a year, with room to expand. The deal was struck and construction began almost immediately. Hesh Motors also recruited local talent, blending Britannian expertise with the company's innovative approach. Amber worked tirelessly to adapt the company's branding to European sensibilities, emphasizing craftsmanship and reliability values Britannians held dear when the first Britannian-made vehicles rolled off the production line 6 months later. They were met with enthusiasm. A grand opening event in Manchester drew crowds of curious onlookers, and pre-orders poured in from across the country. In Asia, the expansion presented unique challenges. The Yamato kingdom, though eager to modernize, was deeply rooted in tradition. Matthew knew that success here would require more than just selling automobiles. It would mean understanding and respecting the culture. Amber, having studied the Yamato kingdom's customs and market dynamics, accompanied Matthew on the journey to the kingdom's bustling capital of Edo. Their goal was to meet with influential figures who could facilitate Hesh Motors' entry into the market. One such figure was Lord Takamura, a progressive daimyo known for his support of modernization. Over tea in a traditional tatami room, Matthew presented his vision for bringing automobiles to the Yamato kingdom. Lord Takamura, Matthew began, bowing respectfully, Hesh Motors seeks to be a partner in your nation's progress. Our vehicles are not just tools of transportation but symbols of innovation and possibility. With your guidance, we can introduce this technology in a way that benefits your people. Takamura sipped his tea thoughtfully. The Yamato kingdom is at a crossroads, Mr. Hesh. We are eager to embrace the future but cautious of losing our identity. How will your company honor our traditions while introducing your technology? Matthew gestured to Amber, who presented detailed plans. We intend to employ local workers and train them in modern manufacturing techniques. Our vehicles for Yamato will also incorporate elements inspired by your culture, such as design motifs and naming conventions that reflect your heritage. Takamura nodded slowly. If you can deliver on this promise, you will find great success here. With Takamura's support, Hesh Motors secured a site near Edo to build its Asian headquarters and factory. The factory design incorporated both modern engineering and traditional Yamato architectural elements, blending seamlessly with its surroundings. The first vehicle produced in the Yamato factory was named Hesh Tenshi, meaning Hesh Angel, symbolizing progress and harmony. The launch event was a spectacle, featuring traditional music and dance alongside demonstrations of the car's capabilities. It captured the imagination of the Yamato people and cemented Hesh Motors' place in the kingdom's modernization efforts. Back in Hudson, Matthew reflected on the company's rapid transformation. The Britannian branch was thriving. With orders coming in from across Europe, the Yamato kingdom had embraced Hesh Motors, and the factory in Edo was already planning to expand production. Experience tales at Novelbin. Amber entered his office, a stack of reports in hand. Matthew, the numbers from Britannia and Yamato are in both branches are exceeding expectations. Matthew took the reports, skimming through them. Good. Now we focus on maintaining quality and adapting to each market's needs. We're no longer just an Amarathian company, we're a global one. Amber smiled, and to think it all started with a few automobiles in Hudson. Matthew set the reports down and looked out the window, his mind already turning to the next challenge. Soon we will dominate the world, where every part of the world will have automobiles.